What's going on, college football fans? Man, you must be a diehard fan if you are watching our show in early June. Our show, of course, always talking ball. I'm Tyler Noe. He's Lance Barton. We've got a great show on tap today. We are power ranking the ACC quarterbacks 1 through 8. So basically the top half of the conference, and the way we are going about this is how we are expecting these guys to perform in 2025 in the upcoming season, coupled with a little bit of the experience factor and how they performed in the past. So let's get into it. There's no sense beating around the bush. Number one quarterback in the ACC. If you don't have him number one, I'm not sure what to tell you. It's Cade Klubnik of Clemson. Haven't checked the odds lately, but he's top 2, top 3 to win the Heisman. It's his third year in Garrett Riley's system. He's going to have a plethora of options. I'm not saying quite that they are, to the level of Sammy Watkins, T. Higgins, those guys, but Antonio Williams and Brian Wesco Jr. are two really good options to start with.
Yeah, overall, like Clemson's offensive line should be much better this year. The wide receiver core, obviously, they're top 5 in the country. Overall wide receiver unit. So Klubnik's going to have in year 3 in Riley's system. You hit it. I mean, you can make an argument that Klubnik was the most improved player in college football last year from year over year. A couple of years ago, I think it was the 2023 season, first year in Riley's system, first year being the full-time starter. Klubnik just did not live up to the hype that a lot of people thought he was going to be that year. Turned the ball over too much as well. And then the following years and last year, the dude was one of the most productive players in all of college football. I mean, Klubnik had 43 total touchdowns, just a touchdown machine. And the year-over-year deal, too. Like in 2023, he had 19 passing touchdowns. Last year, he had 36 passing touchdowns. I mean, dude, that's literally almost double. He had 2,800 yards passing in 2023, 3,600 yards passing last year. He cut down on the turnovers. The rushing numbers obviously improved as well. And he played some really solid competition, playing South Carolina, playing Georgia earlier in the season, obviously playing Texas at Texas and Austin in the first round of the college football playoffs. Just Klubnik had a big-time year last year, man. And obviously this year we expect him to be, most people's national lists that you see, most have him number 1.
Yeah.
You'll see a few every now and then with a couple other different names, but I've not seen a single list that does not have Cade Klubnik in the top 3 in the country, and rightfully so. I mean, when you have 43 total touchdowns, the numbers he put up last year, with the weapons, the offensive line, just everything he's going to have this year. I just, barring injury, Klubnik should have a humongous freaking year, dude, in the third year of Garrett Riley's system.
What would you say to the people? I mean, if you look at their schedule last year and their results, they lost 4 games.
Yep.
And arguably to the 4 toughest teams they played, other than, beating SMU on a last-second field goal. So, people are kind of saying, oh, he piled up stats against crappy teams.
Good argument to make. It's a good argument to make. But, like, he's still, like, I know they lost the game. Like, his overall numbers against South Carolina weren't terrible. Like, when you combine, again, he's a legit Klubnik's a dual threat. He is. I know he may not get as much credit as some of the other guys that are legit dual threat guys, but he is a dual threat. And, like, his running ability is very underrated. If you remember that long touchdown run he had against Pitt there at the end of the game in the fourth quarter to beat Pitt at Pitt. But he ran the ball solid, had a couple rushing touchdowns against South Carolina. In the game against Texas, do you think that had anything to do with him of why they lost that game? No. It's because Q Wisner is still running on that Clemson defense. So no, I don't I understand why somebody might have that argument as far as wins and losses is concerned. But as far as his portion of it, the numbers that he's putting up, his production overall, he was extremely productive in almost every single game. He was not very productive against Georgia, that first game of the year.
Yeah.
Very first game of the year. After that, he was very solid almost every single game the rest of the season.
Second guy on our list, I'll be honest, I went back and forth on this one.
I know, I'm sure you did.
If you've watched this show. But, I mean, talent alone, we've got Carson Beck at number 2. Quarterback now for the Miami Hurricanes. So he is obviously in the ACC, played in the SEC the past couple of years. 2023, stellar year. Going into 2024, a lot of people expecting him to be a first-round draft pick. and it just didn't pan out that way. He had guys dropping the ball left and right. Georgia led the nation in drops. The running game was non-existent. I mean, to Georgia standards, just wasn't there last year.
Yeah, dude, they were 104th in the nation in rushing.
Yeah, and somehow they still got to the SEC championship game
and won it.
And now, would they have won it? Had Carson Beck stayed in that game, not got injured on the last play of the first half? Nobody knows. You can have your opinion on whether or not they would have won that or not, but when he's in rhythm, he's a good quarterback. Like that second half against Alabama, fantastic. I mean, obviously, Bama was on their heels, but he was in rhythm there. But, I got my thoughts on Carson Beck. I'm going to let you take the floor on this one.
Yeah, I just think, the regression year to year. I mean, you mentioned he was kind of projected by most to be a first-round pick. But it wasn't just a first-round pick. He was projected by just about everybody to be the number one overall pick in the draft going into last year, before last year started, going into the season, in the preseason. And, I mean, he had 3,900 yards passing in 23, had 3,400 yards passing last year. But still, 3,900 and 3,400 back-to-back years. That's still very solid. I know that the turnovers obviously was the biggest issue. I mean, he had double the amount of turnovers last year than he did in 2023. And also too, I mean, you kind of talked about it, hit on it in that half to half against Bama. That was really the theme to me for Carson Beck last year.
Yeah, I was going to say too many times they just started games awful. Like, and the look in his eyes, there wasn't a lot of let's get going. And then it obviously didn't turn around the Ole Miss game, the Georgia Tech game. They barely snuck out of there at home.
That wasn't his fault. The reason they won that game was because of him.
Yeah, but the first half, it just seems like, and I don't know if it was Bobo or what, but it just the first half of games he really struggled.
Yeah, and I mean, he was great against Georgia Tech in the second half. He was solid against Tennessee almost the entire game, and against Clemson. But he was not as good against Florida. He was not good against Ole Miss. He wasn't good in the first half against Bama, but was great in the second half against Bama. You mentioned he wasn't really great in the first quarter against Georgia Tech, but started turning it on, especially there in the second half, in the fourth quarter, and in overtime.
I don't even think he was great in either games against Texas.
No, he wasn't. Oh, no, He wasn't. He was bad. He was bad against Texas, both games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, just inconsistent. We've seen, though, what he is capable of. And this year, the reason why we have him here at number 2, and why I firmly have him at number 2, is because, let's just be real. Overall, the defenses he's going to face this year is not going to be what he faced last year. Georgia had the number 1 ranked strength of schedule in the country last year. They played 8 defenses that were ranked in the top 40 in the country last year.
Yeah.
Now Miami does play Florida and Notre Dame in the non-conference this year. Those are two everybody in the world's projecting those two teams to be very solid this year in the non-conference. But overall in the ACC schedule of play, no man, he's going to face some defenses that, with that Shannon Dawson offense, with the offensive line that he's going to have at Miami this year, a really good offensive line and a veteran offensive line. The receiver position, jury's still out there. I mean, obviously losing Restrepo, losing a guy in the portal that they lost to Alabama. And, I mean, I think the receiver position will be fine, but that is a question mark for this Miami team. It is. I think they're going to have a solid run game. He's going to have a solid offensive line to play behind. That system that Shannon Dawson runs, I mean, it's just an extremely QB-friendly system. Ask Cam Ward. And I just think that Beck is going to have a big year. As long as he can stay healthy, I'll actually be very surprised if he doesn't have a big year. I mean, it seems like most people have forgotten the 2023 version of Carson Beck, and all they remember is the 2024 version. And everybody acting like he was booty last year. Again, we'll just repeat. His receivers led the nation in drops. His run game was absolutely terrible. And he still threw for 3,400 yards against the number 1 ranked strength of schedule in the entire country.
Maybe he'll be a little more focused this year.
I saw somebody say that the single version of Carson Beck in 2023 was a lot better than the one in 2024, but We're not going to sit here and talk about the dating life of a player here. But yeah, I think Beck's going to have a big year for the Canes, man. I'll be surprised if he doesn't.
At number 3, we have Haynes King from Georgia Tech. And obviously, this guy's a dual threat quarterback. We saw what he could do against Miami. We saw what he could do against Georgia. We saw what he could do in that Buster Faulkner offense. Obviously, we saw what Florida State ended up being, but that game in Ireland at the first game of the season, him and Jamal Haynes in the backfield is a lethal 1-2 combo. And I was close to putting him at 2 just because I expect him and Georgia Tech to have big games this year and do big things in the ACC. You didn't have Haynes King at number 3 though, did you?
No, I had a slash by the person we're going to mention next.
Yeah.
I had Haynes King / another name that we're going to mention here in just a second. I don't want to bury the lead here. But dude, it's just what I love most about Haynes King. I love the leadership, the absolute just dog mentality. You don't hear a lot about it. This guy plays injured. He doesn't just play banged up. He plays injured.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the definition of the guy that if you were in that locker room or you're in a huddle, have you ever been in a huddle in a football game, when you've got that guy as your trigger man, knowing what he's playing through and that you pretty much got to cart him off that field to make him not play. Like you mentioned the Miami game, dude, he played kind of sparingly in that game. Like he wasn't playing the entire game in that game. He didn't play against Notre Dame last year because he was banged up. But every game that he played in, pretty much the majority of the season, he was banged up. What I love about Haynes King is just he's not going to be your guy that's going to be the top draft pick, and he's not going to be the guy that's going to stand there and make the underwear Olympics, NFL combine wow throws where he throws it to the deep far hash, running to his left and jumping in the air and slinging it sidearm like a Zach Wilson or something at the NFL combine. He's just going to be a guy, man, that's going to sit there and make the right plays, the fundamental plays. He's a really good dual threat guy. His overall production from the rush and pass standpoint is phenomenal. Again, another guy that just drastically improved year over year. He cut down on his interceptions quite a bit year over year. His completion percentage in 2023 was 61%. The dude was 73% last year completion percentage, which tied for third in the entire nation with Dylan Gabriel. And he's had double-digit and we talked about the dual threat. He's had double-digit rushing touchdowns back-to-back years. He averaged 5.5 yards a carry, and that stat actually does include his sack numbers. So the fact that he's still averaging 5.5 yards a clip, if you take his sack numbers out, I would imagine it's pretty substantially more. But you want to talk about a production? You mentioned that Georgia game. Dude had over 400 yards and 5 tutties.
He would have had more if they didn't start each overtime at the 2-yard line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No kidding. But dude, we love Haynes King. We've obviously picked up quite a bit of Georgia Tech followers, it seems like, over the last few months. So we appreciate you guys following the show. Hey, it's a good time to plug it. Hit that subscribe button here on the bottom of the screen. Follow us on Apple and Spotify. But we're big believers in Haynes King. We are. We just think this guy is going to have a humongous year as long as he can stay relatively healthy.
Yeah, and the guy you had 3B to Haynes King's 3A is our number 4 quarterback, SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings.
Yeah.
Good year last year for Kevin Jennings, coming in, quarter of the way through the season for Preston Stone. Not a great performance against Clemson in the first half, and not a great performance against Penn State and Happy Valley in the first round of the college football playoff. And I like Kevin Jennings. This is more for me an experience and kind of what you did last year. Like, you looked solid last year. I think he'll put up good numbers this year. It worries me a little bit just about the production that they did lose on the outside, kind of some of the weapons he has to throw to.
Yeah, I'm with you. The overall wide receiver position, maybe they're going to be great. Like, we don't know. Like, this is one of those. There's 2 guys on this list, so we'll get to another one here in a minute, that I think that could skyrocket people's list during the season, and that could be the highest on these lists at the end of the season. He has that capability. He has that talent. Kevin Jennings can take over games. That's the type of talent that he has with his dual threat ability. The inconsistencies, though, but that's what you get in a first-year starter. I mean, his first year starting last year, he was just the wow factor jump off the page, his athleticism, the arm talent, just everything about him jumped off the page. And then all of a sudden you would see him just throw an absolute, just terrible. And not some of his interceptions he throws, you're just sitting there looking at it like, what in the hell was that? Like not an SMU pony in the screen and just hitting somebody for the other squad right in the chest. And then all of a sudden he'll make that beautiful NFL type throw, or then he'll take off and run and look like a gazelle running through someone's secondary. I mean, that's the type of talent this guy has. He's got to cut down on his turnovers, no doubt. And I don't really hold against him what happened at Penn State. I mean, again, first-year starter. It was it's about as cold as it could possibly be in that game against a really good Penn State team. But let's just call it what it is. I mean, SMU's defense played solid in that game. Him turning the ball over like he did and putting them behind the 8 ball is the reason why that got ugly in a hurry. But he's got all the talent in the world. And I know this is going to sound hot take-ish. I don't really think it is. If SMU is going to be a playoff type team again this year, like some believe that they can, Kevin Jennings is obviously going to play a huge role in that. Yeah. And if that's the case, you may see his name sitting there competing for a spot to go to New York for a Heisman Trophy ceremony. That's how good this guy really can be. I just need to see more of it. I just need to see it more.
These guys we have listed 5 through 8. Haven't really talked about them a lot this offseason so far. Not a lot of these teams were mentioned in our power rankings episodes, post spring, all that stuff. Let's kick it off with number 5, Pittsburgh quarterback Eli Holstein. You know him well. You followed him well. Probably followed him through high school recruiting, all that stuff. Transfer from Alabama. Put up solid numbers for Pat Narduzzi. It's just, Pittsburgh's a tough place to play. It's a tough place to recruit good talent. It's more of like kind of, sports town. They play in an NFL stadium. They don't have their own stadium. It's just a lot of things working against the Panthers there. But Eli Holstein for a good bit last year was seen as kind of like, I mean, if this guy keeps playing this well, Pittsburgh could come out of nowhere and get in this race.
Well, remember how the season started? I mean, we were sitting there like over halfway through the year. Pitt was right there in the thick of the ACC title race. They had that Friday night. I think it was either a Thursday night or Friday night game where I think they just intercepted your boy there at Syracuse again.
Yeah.
They had like 4 pick sixes or something like crazy that game against Syracuse.
Yeah.
But then they went to SMU and got beat at SMU. Holstein here battled some injuries last year. He's a tough, hard-nosed type guy. He's a blue collar. I mean, honestly, fits Narduzzi and Pittsburgh really well. But Cade Bell, new offensive coordinator they brought in last year at Pitt, it was a perfect system for Holstein. So Holstein was the number 2 quarterback in the state of Louisiana coming out of high school. The guy that was number 1 has the last name Manning. And Holstein was, again, very highly recruited, very highly ranked 4-star that went to Alabama. And honestly, I think that the transfer portal is made for people just like Eli Holstein in a good way. A lot of other really good quarterbacks that were on Alabama's roster. He wasn't going to get the chance to play, so he gets in the portal, gets an opportunity to place like Pitt, perfect system, and he made the best of it. In 4 of his first 5 starts last year, he threw for over 300 yards and threw for at least 3 touchdowns in all 5 of those games. And again, he started battling injuries. He was clutch in the fourth quarter. If you remember, Pitt had these crazy fourth quarter comebacks early in the year, the backyard brawl being one of them against West Virginia. I think it was Cincinnati was another one that they did that against early in the year, and it was Holstein that was doing it a lot. Yeah, it was Holstein doing it in that fourth quarter. But if he can stay healthy, because he ended up getting hurt at the very end of the year, Pitt went on a big downfall after he went out. But it also shows how important he is to that Pitt team. So year 2 in Cade Bell's system, as talented as he is as well, I think Holstein's going to have a big year for the Panthers this year.
Number 6 on our list, Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech. I had him ranked ahead of Holstein. You had your boy ranked down at number 8.
Yep.
We met in the middle. He's at 6. And I think if we're talking potential, and you talked a lot about Kevin Jennings' potential and what kind of player he can be, you can put Kyron Drones in that same category. No doubt about it.
He was the hype train last year. He was the one everybody was hyping up Virginia Tech and Kyron Drones. going into last year. And it just didn't live up. And a lot of that had to do with his injuries. But pretty interesting stat here. You know, Virginia Tech went 6-7 last year. It was their record overall. They went 5-2. 5-2 in games that Kyron Drones played the entire game in from start to finish. Because he missed a couple of games due to injury. He got banged up and left games during the middle of games due to injury. To go even further than that, Virginia Tech is 13-13 in the last 2 years. They're 11 of their 13 wins are games that Drones started and played the entire game in. Because 2 years ago, he did not start the season as their starting quarterback. They brought Drones in, I think it was like game 3 or so, because when they brought him in 2023. And then he just took off, and Virginia Tech won a lot of games down the stretch, beat Tulane in their bowl game that year, and the hype train was on. Virginia Tech got all that returning production last year. The 6'5", 235-pound, legit dual threat, former 4-star out of Texas that transferred from Baylor to Virginia Tech. We were all hyping him up, and it just, you know, the injury bug pretty much bit him last year and ruined his season. So I'm with you. But for me, availability is just as much as the productivity here. Like, that's great that he's super talented and he's a freak and all that. Obviously, you see the helmet here behind me. I know a little bit about Virginia Tech football with my entire family being from that area, that New River Valley area of Virginia, and grew up on Virginia Tech football. So I watch every single game, keep up with their recruiting. I'm with you that Drones has the ability to shoot up this list in a hurry, but I need to see him healthy. The way he plays, his tough running style, it does warrant the exposure to injury. And so far, that's been a problem. I do like the hire of Philip Montgomery as offensive coordinator. He's former offensive coordinator under Art Briles at Baylor. You no reason to go into the Art Briles stuff. There's tons of offenses around the country that are running some type of different formula in regards to Art Briles' offense. You know, Ole Miss, and you've got Josh Heupel at Tennessee. Philip Montgomery was the head coach at Tulsa. It didn't work out great for him as a head coach. But the dude's a good offensive coach. I think the hire there was solid at Virginia Tech. I just don't really know about the weapons overall around him, man. I don't know if he's going to have, like last year, they brought back multiple receivers. I think they're going to be solid at the receiver position overall. But yeah, man, it was tough for me between Holstein and Drones. Obviously, too, a little bit of a bias there towards Drones at Virginia Tech. But if I'm being non-biased on it, which I need to be here, I need him to be available more often.
Yeah, he's going to be available and hopefully 100% for the first game of the season against South Carolina, which should be a good one. Now, he was 100% available against Vanderbilt last year in the first game of the season, and they lost as heavy favorites. And that kind of right there just derailed the hype train. They get, a return game, Vanderbilt coming to Lane Stadium this year. They get, Georgia Tech and Louisville and Miami. And so he's going to have plenty of chances to prove himself. I'm high on him. I think, like you said, if he can stay healthy, he could be a solid quarterback. At number 7, we got Darian Mensah, quarterback from Duke, transfer from Tulane. Not a lot of people watched Tulane football last year. I get it. It was, it's American Athletic Conference, bigger conferences to watch. One game that most people probably caught was the Tulane-Kansas State game. And I mean, maybe the Oklahoma game, but the Tulane-Kansas State game was back and forth. And that's kind of, I think, as a true freshman for him, that was like his coming out party right there.
He red shirt, but still either way, same. Good point. Like, as a redshirt freshman, him in like game 2 of his career as a starter, he throws for well over 300 yards against a Kansas State team that, between them and Oklahoma State, at that point in the season, game 2 of the year, everybody had Kansas State and Oklahoma State and Utah as the 3 teams predicted to win the Big 12. So for the Purple Cats to go into Tulane like that, and all of a sudden you've got this redshirt freshman that's just lighting them up. And you're right. I was one of those that did watch that game. And it was a hell of a game. Yeah. And Mensah was phenomenal. And, dude, when he entered the portal, you remember kind of how surprised we were that he went to Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, then I know that sounds like Duke's catching strays here by me saying it like that. But you're talking about a guy that was like the number 3 overall player in the portal at the time. Period. One of the top quarterbacks in this last transfer portal cycle. So, again, no offense to Duke, but you just don't think that a guy like that is going to go to Duke.
He's
with the
going to a
receivers
team he's going to a team that won 9 games with Malik Murphy as quarterback.
Exactly. They won 9 games with Malik Murphy last year. Their receiver position this year is going to be better. They got Andrell Anthony transfer over from Oklahoma. They've got some productive guys there at the wide receiver position. Dude, he again, with his overall ability and his dual threat ability, Mensah could have a big year at Duke. And we had Duke, I think 7th in our ACC power ratings. If Duke's going to be an 8 or 9 win team, obviously a lot of that's going to be rested on Darian Mensah's shoulders. But 66% last year, he led the AAC in yards per attempt and completion percentage. Normally, those two things don't go hand in hand together. But when you're leading the nation, one of the leaders in the nation in yards per attempt, and your completion percentage is as high as it was, to 66%, that's a good sign. When you're leading the nation in completion percentage and you're just dinking and dunking and check down Charlie over and over again, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But when you're slinging it down the field like he was and as accurate as he was, it's like it'll be interesting to see if it can translate to playing a little bit more tough competition on a regular basis like Duke's going to be this year. Yeah, man, I love Mensah and I love that for Duke. If you're Duke, like you lost your quarterback in the transfer portal and then you upgraded.
Yeah.
With Mensah.
Yeah, for sure. Last guy on our list, number 8, Miller Moss, quarterback for the Louisville Cardinals. Last year, obviously, it was at USC. Transitioned back to 18 months ago. He's lighting it up for 6 touchdowns against Louisville in a bowl game. Coming into next year, 2024 USC, dark horse for the Heisman. Anybody who plays under Lincoln Riley is going to be a dark horse for a Heisman or a Heisman favorite if you're that talented. He's that good at coaching quarterbacks. It didn't pan out, like everyone thought. He had some really young wide receivers. They obviously transitioned to the Big Ten, and I think that for them and that for the entire program was tougher than they thought it was originally going to be. The travel and all that, going, different time zones every other week. Like, I think it was just a little tougher than they thought it was going to be. So he goes from Lincoln Riley, and he goes to one of the true quarterback whisperers. We talk about that a lot. One of the true quarterback whisperers, one of the most underrated head coaches out there in Jeff Brom at Louisville. So, again, it's another guy going from one of the P2 conferences, the SEC Big Ten, going now to the ACC. You're going to play in a little warmer weather. You're not going to be able to, you're not going to Minnesota in the middle of October playing a 24-17 game. Like, you're going to be traveling down to, Miami, traveling down to Virginia, playing the Cavaliers. It's going to be probably a little bit easier defenses that he can face. What are your expectations from Miller Moss?
Well, I think that this is the one. If we're talking about projecting this year, this is the one I think we could be the most wrong on, because of everything you just said. The competition overall that he's going to face defensively. Last year, Miller Moss in 9 games started. He faced 4 teams last year that were ranked in the top 15 in pass D. He faced 4 defenses that were ranked in the top 10 overall, period, in total defense in 9 starts last year. And, I mean, he's gotten the tutelage already from one of the best quarterback coaches there is that there is in Lincoln Riley, and he now is with Jeff Brom, like you said. The wide receiver position for Louisville, very solid. The running back position, we have him as the best running back position in the ACC, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Isaac Brown and just like
Duke Watson.
The running game for Louisville is going to be really good as well.
Yep.
So he's Jeff Brom's starting quarterback, really good weapons around him, and not going to be facing 4 or 5 of the top ranked defenses in the country, week in and week out like he was last year. And we both think that Louisville is going to be very solid this year and have a chance to make some noise in the ACC.
Yeah.
So if that is happening, obviously Jeff Brom's quarterback is going to play a huge role into that. Tyler Shuck ended up shooting up the draft boards this past year after playing for 1 year under Jeff Brom. I'm not saying that Miller Moss is going to be shooting up draft boards or anything like that. Just saying that I think he's going to be an extremely productive quarterback this year under Brom in the ACC. And I think Louisville's going to have a big year, and a big reason to that is going to be Miller Moss. One other thing that I looked at his overall numbers. Obviously, we're not trying to be stat sheet Sallies here, but he averaged 283 passing yards per game in his 9 starts. if he would have, like, let's just say at the end of the year, if he would have able to let him start all like 11, 12 games that USC played, that would have been good enough. 283 passing yards per game would have been good enough for 8th in the nation in passing yards per game.
Yeah. You would expect that under Lincoln Riley, though.
Agreed. But, okay, would you expect that also under Jeff Brom in the ACC?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think that this could be the one that we end up being the most wrong on. But obviously, we talked about when we previewed the ACC, man. I mean, one of the reasons why we thought the ACC was going to be better this year than what they were last year, and more fun of a conference to watch this year, was the all-important quarterback position. And these 8 names that we just went through with you guys is a huge reason why.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a fun year in the ACC this year. Obviously, Clemson is kind of back on top with their quarterback back for the 3rd year. So, but, you know, a lot of question marks. And maybe one of these guys that we haven't mentioned from these other teams, maybe they come out of nowhere and, you know, they're a top 5 ACC quarterback. It could easily happen in a conference like this. So we're excited to watch it. Short episode today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back with more episodes like this as ranking season is kind of in full effect here at ATB. Be prepping for all summer. Rankings list to pop up on our socials on X, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next time.